Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Haji Ahmad Shah Al-Musta'in Billah, has officiated the opening ceremony of the Malaysian-owned Battersea Power Station in central London ahead of its public launch this Friday. His Majesty was accompanied by Raja Pemaisuri Agong Tunku Haja Azizah Aminah Maimunah Iskandariah, Almarhum Al-Mutawakkil Allah Sultan Iskandar Al-Hajj, along with the Malaysian High Commissioner, His Excellency Dato' Zakri Jaafar. Sultan Abdullah and Tunku Azizah's arrival at the Battersea Power Station were received by Pemodalan Nasional Berhad PNB Group Chairman Tun Arifin Zakaria, Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Utama Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz, High Commissioner of Malaysia to the United Kingdom UK Datuk Zakri Jaafar, UK Minister for Investment Dominic Johnson and UK Minister for Trade Policy Greg Hans. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong officiated the opening of the Battersea Power Station by symbolically turning the power back on in Turbine Hall A, which had laid dormant for over 40 years and will now house part of the power station's retail offering. Once a coal-fired power station, it is now set to become one of London's most exciting retail and leisure destinations. Under the custodianship of its shareholders, SIMW Property, SP Setia and the Employees Provident Fund EPF since 2012, the Grade 2 listed iconic landmark has been restored to its former glory and the wider area has been transformed into a vibrant community. Earlier, the royal couple paid a courtesy call on King Charles III at Buckingham Palace. Comptroller of the Royal Household for Istana Negara, Datuk Seri Ahmad Fadil Shamsuddin, said that during the 40-minute courtesy call, Sultan Abdullah and King Charles also discussed, among others, bilateral relations between Malaysia and the UK, as well as environmental issues and the Malaysian-owned Battersea Power Station in London. He said the courtesy call by the Agong and Raja Pemaisuri reflects the closeness of His Majesty with King Charles III, as they have been friends for more than 4 decades, which started with them playing polo together during their teens at various international tournaments. The courtesy visit, which is the second meeting between Sultan Abdullah and King Charles this year, also reflects this close relationship between Malaysia and the UK. King Charles III succeeded his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who died at the age of 96 on 19 September. She was England's longest reigning monarch, having ruled since 1952. The Civil Defence Platinum Decade document DPPA 2022-2032 will be the driving force behind the Civil Defence Force APM in the next 10 years. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the document contains aspects of disaster management and national preparedness that are part of the government's agenda to ensure the well-being of keluarga Malaysia. In his speech delivered by Minister in the Prime Minister's Department Special Functions, Dato' Dr. Abdul Latif Ahmad, at the APM Platinum Decade celebration, the Premier said the DPPA seeks to further enhance APM services and to create a resilient keluarga Malaysia that stays strong together.
Dapat melahirkan keluarga Malaysia yang teguh bersama, berdaya tahan serta mampu mengadaptasi konsep masyarakat yang mampu membantu diri sendiri dalam kehidupan seharian, terutama ketika berhadapan sebarang insiden kecemasan, krisis, bencana dan peperangan.
Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said the commitment of various parties in establishing an inclusive strategic partnership in disaster management and national preparedness is also important to further strengthen the resilience of keluarga Malaysia. The DPPA aims at powering effective disaster management, specifically in preserving the welfare of disaster victims and protecting lives and property, entrusted to APM as the agency tasked to manage disasters and emergencies. The Royal Malaysia Police PDRM is ready to mobilise 21,019 officers and personnel nationwide in preparation for the monsoon floods. Home Minister Datuk Seri Hamzah Zainuddin said 1,681 assets, including 367 boats, 845 four-wheel drive vehicles, 454 lorries and 11 air assets are also ready to be dispatched according to needs and current developments. In addition, the minister said 4,367 officers and personnel of the People's Voluntary Corps RELA, along with assets of 41 3-ton lorries, 36 four-wheel drive vehicles are also on standby mode.
PMM pula ditugaskan untuk memberi bantuan ke pulau-pulau khususnya penghantaran bekalan makanan dan keperluan asas dan juga pemindahan mangsa banjir dengan menggunakan pesawat udara dan bot-bot yang diperlukan.
Meanwhile, Dato' Sri Hamzah said Inspector General of Police Tan Sri Akrisani Abdullah Sani had indicated that PDRM will face constraints in its relief operation if flood strikes during the 15th general election. He said for the post, PDRM will assign over 94,000 of its 120,000 personnel compared to almost 75,000 during GE15 as a result of the automatic registration of Malaysians aged 18 and above as voters. A weak earthquake with a magnitude of 3.2 on the Richter scale that was detected about 13 kilometers southwest of Kuna, Sabah late yesterday caused some panic when tremors were felt in the area. According to Malaysia Meteorology Department Met Malaysia web portal, the epicenter of the earthquake with a magnitude of 3.2 on the Richter scale occurred at coordinates 4.6 degrees north and 118.2 degrees east, 13 kilometers southwest of Kuna at 11:10 p.m. Kuna Fire and Rescue Station Chief Muhammad Omar Bata said the tremor was also felt at the station, but no distress calls were received regarding the matter. 2 immigration officers were arrested yesterday to assist in the investigation into the case of a syndicate smuggling blacklisted illegal immigrants into the country. Immigration Department Director General Datuk Seri Khairul Zaimi Daud said the 2 officers aged 20 and 27 years old were stationed at Sultan Abu Bakar Complex in Johor Bahru. He said earlier the department busted a syndicate known as Ah Chong in an operation carried out at Larkin Central and arrested 25 illegal immigrants from Indonesia comprising 13 men and 12 women as well as 2 local men aged 34 and 39 believed to be the transporters. According to him, the syndicate is suspected to have been active in smuggling blacklisted illegal immigrants banned from entering the country since the reopening of the country's borders in April.
Setiap migran akan membuat bayaran sebanyak secara purata 5 ke 6 ribu seorang. Tetapi daripada temu bual yang saya lakukan sebentar tadi, terdapat di kalangan mereka yang membayar sehingga 19 juta rupiah, iaitu lebih kurang 7 ataupun 8 ribu ringgit.
Datuk Seri Khairul Zaimi said the immigrants were being detained under Section 36 of the Immigration Act 1959-63, while the immigration officers and the 2 local suspects were being investigated under Section 26A of the Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Act 2007. The autopsy report on a decomposed woman's remains found near the traffic light intersection in Jalan Tambun in Ipoh revealed that the woman had died of strangulation. Perak Police Chief Datuk Muhammad Yusri Hassan Basri said the case was reclassified as murder and investigated under Section 302 of the Penal Code. In a statement issued last night, Datuk Muhammad Yusri said police are investigating this case from various angles. Based on the tattoo on the arm and finger, he said the decomposed body is believed to be that of a 23-year-old local woman. A mobile phone found at the scene was also confirmed to belong to the victim. Datuk Muhammad Yusri also urged the public with information about the incident to contact Senior Investigating Officer ASP Chua Tzi Yuan to assist in investigations. Yesterday, the media reported that police found a woman's decomposed body in the bushes when investigating an accident involving a car that had crashed into a drain at 5:25 a.m. Datuk Muhammad Yusri said when police arrived at the scene to investigate the accident after receiving information, they found a decomposed body in the bushes about 2 meters from where the Proton Iswara aerobag car driven by a man had crashed. Iran condemns Russia's annexation of Ukraine regions, and that and more coming up in our foreign segment. Indian authorities have halted production at a pharmaceutical factory under investigation over the deaths of 69 children at the Gambia. The World Health Organization last week warned that 4 cough and cold remedies manufactured by Maiden Pharmaceuticals in the northern state of Haryana could cause acute kidney injury. The WHO said laboratory testing found unacceptable amounts of potentially life-threatening contaminants, adding that the products may have been distributed beyond the West African country. Haryana State Health Minister Anil Vij said the authorities have ordered that all drugs production at the factory be stopped with immediate effect. The minister added that a preliminary inspection found 12 violations at Maiden's facility in the town of Kundli, about 40 kilometers from the capital, New Delhi. However, Maiden Pharmaceuticals Director Naresh Goyal has reportedly denied the deaths were caused by cough syrups produced at his company. He said the deaths have been due to paracetamol syrup and not due to his company's cough syrups. The company has caught the attention of Indian regulators several times before, with the Food and Drug Administration has issued notices to the firm 4 times this year over substandard manufacturing based on batch tests. Israeli forces shot dead a Palestinian teenager in a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank yesterday. Palestinian Health Ministry said Usama Adawi, 18, was killed by the Israeli military's live fire to the stomach in the Al-Arab camp. Official Palestinian news agency Wafa said he was killed in clashes during which Israeli forces shot at the Palestinians and used tear gas. The shooting comes a day after an Israeli soldier was shot and killed in the northern West Bank, prompting an ongoing manhunt. Security forces are also in pursuit of a man who killed a soldier on Saturday at a checkpoint near the Shuafat refugee camp. Palestinians launched a rare strike in Jerusalem yesterday over the days-long operation by Israeli security forces. Businesses were shuttered in the old city and along the main commercial street of the city's eastern sector, which is usually bustling with shoppers and traffic. The Israeli military said it had blocked roads leading to the city, where Palestinians were also observing the strike. Israeli forces have launched near-daily raids in the West Bank in recent months, and dozens of Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces, including fighters and civilians. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 4 Palestinian teenagers have been shot dead in the West Bank since Friday. The United Nations General Assembly yesterday overwhelmingly voted to condemn Russia's annexation of parts of Ukraine after Moscow vetoed a similar effort in the Security Council. The General Assembly approved the resolution with 143 in favour and 5 against, but 35 nations abstained, including China, India, South Africa and Pakistan. The final vote was largely the same, with a net 2 more votes against Russia than in March when the General Assembly condemned the initial invasion of Ukraine. Bangladesh, Iraq and Senegal, which abstained in March, yesterday voted to condemn Russia. Nicaragua, under growing international pressure over human rights, switched from abstaining to vote no alongside only Russia, Belarus, North Korea and Syria. The resolution condemns the organisation by the Russian Federation of so-called referendums within the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine and the attempt illegal annexation announced last month of 4 regions by President Vladimir Putin. It calls on all UN and international agencies not to recognize any changes announced by Russia to borders and demands that Moscow immediately and unconditionally reverse its decisions. Meanwhile, international backers of Ukraine vowed to deliver new air defences immediately as Kiev pressed them to bolster protection against Russia's missile blitz. A US-led group of some 50 countries had talks at NATO headquarters in Brussels with a focus on air defences after Russian President Vladimir Putin unleashed a barrage across Ukraine following a blast at a bridge to the annexed Crimea Peninsula. Western allies have scrambled to work out how to supply more advanced systems to Ukraine as diplomats admit they have precious few to spare.
Resolve to support Ukraine's defenders extends through all seasons. So this contact group stands united and determined We will continue to boost Ukraine's defensive capabilities for today's urgent needs and for the long haul.
A first Iris-T medium-range system has arrived in Ukraine after Germany decided to ship it before even giving it to its own troops. The United States has also said it is looking to expedite the delivery of its NASAMS anti-missile and anti-drone system to Kiev, and a first batch of 2 is expected in the coming weeks. Deliveries of a further 6 units could take far longer as they needed to be manufactured, and US sources said Washington is eyeing the possibility of trying to get Cold War-era Hawk systems to Ukraine in the meantime. The European Commission recommended yesterday that Bosnia and Herzegovina be granted the status of candidate to join the European Union on the understanding that a number of steps are taken.
And today, we have proposed to grant candidate status to Bosnia and Herzegovina in the college decision. We have recognized Georgia's European perspective too. So, wind of change is once again blowing through Europe, and we have to capture this momentum. We have to push for this momentum. The Western Balkans belong in our family, and we have to make this very, very clear.
If the EU, which currently comprises 27 member countries, adopts the recommendation, Bosnia would join 7 other nations with candidates status, namely Turkey, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, Moldova and Ukraine. The Commission said Bosnia needed to make progress on democracy, functionality of state institutions, rule of law, the fight against corruption and organised crime, as well as guaranteeing media freedom and migration management. The process to join the European Union can take many years as candidates implement reforms that have to be rigorously evaluated by Brussels. It can also grind to a halt, which is the case with Turkey's bid. Striking French oil refinery employees voted to maintain blockades now in their 3rd week, despite a government order for some of them to return to work in a bid to get fuel supplies flowing. The industrial action in pursuit of pay hikes has paralyzed 6 out of the 7 fuel refineries in France, leading to shortages of petrol and diesel exacerbated by panic buying from drivers. However, President Emmanuel Macron vowed that things would return to normal in the coming week. Having previously threatened to use emergency powers to order essential workers back to the job on pain of fines or jail time, the government announced yesterday it was putting them into action. Macron said further re-questioning proceedings will take place if the labour dispute is not being solved through dialogue, adding 1 in 3 petrol stations in the country still lacked sufficient supplies. Trade unions are demanding wage increases to help workers cope with spiralling inflation as Europe contends with one of its worst cost of living crises in decades. While the right to strike is enshrined in the French constitution, the government can re-question a minimum number of staff needed to sustain a service in certain circumstances. Next in sports, Lewandowski keeps Barca Champions League hope alive. Stay with us. The victory of UAE Team Emirates rider Juan Sebastian Molano in the second stage of the Le Tour de Langkawi LTDL from Kuala Kelawang to Raub yesterday was cancelled. According to a statement issued by the organizer, the Colombian rider's title was revoked after he was found to have committed an irregular sprint offence while approaching the 300-metre finish line at Dataran Raub. The result saw the second stage champion title covering a distance of 178.9 kilometres going to Arab Pro Racing Sunshine Coast rider Craig Wiggins, while Glebsterza Astana Kazakhstan team was in second place, while Jacob Marixo Alpecin Desinic was third. Molano dropped to 109 for the second stage of the race alongside the last group of riders to reach the finish line. However, he is allowed to continue racing as usual. Now, the question as to whether the upcoming Malaysia Cup matches need rescheduling would only be known once the Election Commission EC decides on the key dates of the 15th General Election GE15 on 20th October. Malaysian Football League MFL Chief Executive Officer Stuart Ramalingam said the announcement of Parliament's dissolution on Monday by Prime Minister Dato Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob could have bearing on the fixtures of the Malaysia Cup scheduled for kick-off on 25th October. MFL is expecting huge crowd at the stadiums for every match, hence the security issues was a concern for MFL during this period.
Keperluan keselamatan di setiap home venue adalah satu kerisauan MFL, terutamanya dengan adanya pembubaran parlimen dan juga perhatian dan fokus keselamatan tempatan yang mungkin ada tugasan yang berbeza daripada situasi biasa. Pada masa ini saya belum terima apa-apa tarikh resmi mengenai tarikh pencalonan atau tarikh undian sebegini, dan selepas kita terima tarikh resmi, MFL akan mengumumkan jikalau perlu perubahan tarikh mengikut tarikh daripada SPR.
He was met at a media conference after FML First Instant Body FIB Club licensing meeting in Petaling Jaya yesterday. Melaka United FC and Sarawak United failed to acquire a national licence to play due to failure to meet the requirements set in MFL club licensing regulations. However, both the teams can still file appeals to Malaysian Football League if they want to stay competing in the Super League tournament. Malaysia Football League MFL Club Licensing First Instant Body Chairman Sheikh Muhammad Nasir Sheikh Muhammad Sharif explained that Melaka United FC failed to submit the payment or proof of settlement on their overdue payables to employees as of June and August 2022. As for Sarawak United, the club failed to meet the financial and sporting criteria and had 2 FIFA cases against the former players Sandro da Silva Mendoka and Taylor Francis George Regan.
Mereka ada tempoh 7 hari. 7 hari untuk membuat rayuan ke pihak appeal body, iaitu satu badan rayuan bebas, juga badan rayuan bebas yang dilantik oleh pihak MFL. Dan keputusan tadi adalah pada 19 Oktober pukul 5 petang, sebelum atau pada 5 petang. Jadi untuk menentukan sama ada soalan tadi, dokumentasi apa semua tu, memang mereka boleh, sekiranya mereka tidak membuat berpuas hati dengan keputusan yang kami buat. Sebab keputusan ini adalah berdasarkan kepada dokumen yang dihantar kepada kami, sama ada cukup atau tidak cukup.
He added MFL also required each team competing to submit documents proving that they are free from any overdue salaries, as well as payments to the Employees Provident Fund EPF, Inland Revenue Board IRB and the Social Security Organisation SOCSO by 15 December ahead of the upcoming Super League season next year. On to Champions League news. Robert Lewandowski rescued Barcelona's hope of reaching the knockout rounds with 2 late goals to earn his side a 3-3 draw with Inter Milan at the Camp Nou early this morning. Barca needed at least a draw to have a chance to avoid missing the knockout rounds for the second year in a row, and the Poland international delivered 2 goals near the end of the second half in a dramatic fashion. Barca took a deserved lead into the break when Ousmane Dembele shot past Andre Onana from Sergi Roberto's pass across the 6-yard box just before half-time. Inter drew level early in the second half through Nicolo Barella, who pounced on a cross from Alessandro Bastoni and finished past Marc-Andre ter Stegen from a close range. Lautaro Martinez fired Simon Inzaghi's side into the lead shortly past the hour marker to pile more pressure on Barca. In the 82nd minute, Lewandowski header from a cross into the area came back to him off an Inter defender, and he shot past Onana to make it 2-2. But Inter's Robin Gosens put Inter back in the lead minutes later with a tidy finish on the counter before Lewandowski headed in for his brace in second. Barca third in the Group C standings on 4 points, 3 behind Inter and 8 adrift of Bayern. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich cruised past Victoria Pleasant 4-2, putting them through to the knockout round of the Champions League after punishing the Czech champions during ruthless 4 goals first half display. The Bavarians struck first after 10 minutes when Sadio Mane played a 1-2 with Leon Goretzka before putting the ball in the net. And unmarked Thomas Muller doubled the visitors' lead minutes later when he tapped home across from Kingsley Coman. Goretzka named a player of the match, nabbed a brace to round off the scoring for Bayern as the Germans kept a toothless Pleasant side in a check during a clinical opening half. Bayern manager Julian Nagelsmann made a number of changes in the second half, and the Germans could not maintain the intensity as they allowed Adam Vlakanova and Jan Clement to pull goals back for the home side. Bayern have won all 4 of the group matches to sit in top spot on 12 points, followed by Inter Milan on 7 and Barcelona with 4, while Czechs, who are bottom of Group C, will exit at the group stage. Russian and Belarusian players will be able to compete at the Australian Open as neutrals, while Novak Djokovic would also be welcome to play if he can obtain a visa. Prior to this, tennis authorities banned Russian and Belarusian players from international team competitions due to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine earlier this year, but allowed them to compete at regular tour events. The French Open and US Open Grand Slams allowed them to compete as neutrals, though Wimbledon imposed an outright ban. Tournament director Craig Tiley said Russian and Belarusian players will be eligible to play in the Australian Open, however they cannot represent Russia and its flag. They are also not allowed to participate in any activities such as the Anthem of Russia, and they have to play as independent players under the neutral name. He added 9 times Australian Open champion Novak Djokovic would also be eligible if he's able to overturn a visa ban as a part of his deportation in January. The Serb was kicked out of the country for not being vaccinated against COVID-19 and is barred from re-entering until 2025, though the Australian government can waive the ban at its discretion. Djokovic, who's also missed the US Open over his vaccination status, said last month he was waiting for positive news from Australian authorities. However, Australia's former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews said she hoped the lifting of Djokovic's ban, saying it would be a slap in the face for vaccinated Australians. Why do we tell you stories?
Relevant,
New,
efficient,
accurate.
reliable. We bring you extraordinary stories from around the world, from politicians, bankers, and even your favorite celebrities. This and many more on RTM's English News.
With that ends updates at noon. A reminder of our top story today. Agong officiates Battersea Power Station in London. Tune in to news at 10, coming up at 10 p.m. on saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Shuhaida Arifin. Stay tuned to TV2 and have a pleasant evening.